Well, joining us now on KODI is the representative from the state of Wyoming, Ms. Harriet Hageman. Harriet, how are you doing today? Happy Friday, happy weekend to you.
It's wonderful to be with you, Mac. Things are going well back here in D.C. It's starting to cool down, and the humidity is dropping, so that always makes it a much more pleasant place to be.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you got to live in the swamp, it's always good when things cool down and not so humid, that's for sure. Now, this was a very busy week in Washington and a very busy week for you. First, let's start off with the impeachment inquiry. What are your thoughts? I know you put out a statement, but in your own words, describe to the listeners what exactly is your reaction and what do you think is going to come of it?
The American people deserve to know the level and scope of corruption of the Biden crime family, and most specifically Joe Biden. The reality is that the Biden family has been peddling influence throughout the world for a substantial period of time. And between the period of 2014 to 2019, Hunter Biden was paid over $20 million from bad actors all around the world to have access to his father. The most specific example that we are aware of that influence peddling and how it played out is what happened in the Ukraine several years ago. After Hunter Biden was placed on the board of Burisma, Joe Biden walked into the country and said, we either are going to withhold $1 billion in aid, or you're going to file the special prosecutor that's been appointed to investigate Burisma. I don't know how it gets much more direct than that, and what we're finding in the documents and in the records related to that period of time is that there wasn't a policy reason coming out of Washington, D.C. that Mr. Shokin needed to be fired. That was a personal issue for the Bidens. That's just one of the many issues. Another thing that has happened is that we know that after Joe Biden was elected, the Department of Justice was tipping off Hunter Biden to various investigations, and that there was going to be searches of some of his property so that he was able to move that. We also know from the whistleblowers that the Biden administration and President Biden has been meddling in the Department of Justice and the IRS investigations into Hunter Biden's illegal activities. He got paid that money, and the wild part about it, just from Burisma, he made $1 million, never paid one dime in tax on that. And the gentleman who is now the special counsel on that allowed the statute of limitations to lapse so that he never has to pay taxes on the money that he was paid for by Burisma. So there's just a massive amount of corruption associated with this family. And the question that we have to ask is, to what extent is foreign policy being dictated by Joe Biden's relationship with his son and these malign actors? His son traveled with him on Air Force Two at least 14 times, traveling around the world and meeting with people in Romania and Ukraine and China and walking away with contracts. The whole purpose of the inquiry is to allow us to gather additional documents and information and start getting this information to the American public so that they know what is happening with their government leaders.
You know, I've talked to you about this before the last time you were on, and I guess my question is, as a lawyer, since you've been a lawyer for so long and a very good lawyer, how do you prove that somebody's son benefits from them being president? How do you prove that? What do you need as far as evidence to prove that it was more than just nepotism, that they were actually profiting off of the name? How do you prove that?
Well, I think that the proof here, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, as they say. Mm-hmm. And here what you have is that Hunter Biden had no skill set to sell. All right? From 2003 to 2019, he had a raging crack addiction. We know from his laptop he had quite a few other nefarious addictions as well. This is not a gentleman who had expertise on Ukrainian employment law or was known for negotiating and drafting complicated oil and gas contracts or understood the worldwide oil and gas industry or market. In other words, he had nothing to sell. And when they put together their 20 sham companies, that we have discovered over 20 LLCs that the Biden family created during this period of time. And what they did is they poured money from one LLC to another LLC to another LLC to another LLC, and they just kept pouring money back and forth between these LLCs. But these LLCs didn't do anything except hold the money that they were being paid from these foreign countries and foreign actors. So lots of cases are based upon circumstantial evidence, and we are going to be getting additional documentation. The SARS, for example, the suspicious activity reports, the banks were actually making personal contact here with agencies in Washington, D.C., saying, we've got some serious problems here with what is going on with these bank accounts. This money is coming in. There's no way to trace it. They were filing SARS, not just one or two suspicious activity reports. They were filing multiple SARs against the money that was coming into the Biden family. So again, there are almost a dozen Biden family members who had access to this money that was pouring into these LLCs, none of whom were doing any work for that money.
Okay.
We also will have witnesses who will come in and testify that, of course, that Joe Biden was the big guy. Of course, this was about access to one of the top guys in Washington, D.C. So I am actually not concerned, Mac, that we're going to be able to develop the evidence to demonstrate that Joe Biden was right in the middle of this, because the documents all lead to that. The IRS and the other whistleblowers all lead to that. And really, all we need to use is some common sense. I am not an expert on Ukrainian oil and gas law. If they're hiring me, it's for a different reason.
Gotcha. We're with Representative Harriet Hageman from the great state of Wyoming. As far as Kevin McCarthy, now that Kevin McCarthy has allowed this to move forward, the inquiry to move forward, is the heat off of him, do you think? Do you think he can get the votes to get funding for Congress? What is his job status like, do you think, for the speaker?
His job status is just fine.
Okay.
This is just one of the many issues that we're dealing with right now. There isn't somebody waiting in the wings to take over for Kevin McCarthy. He is the Speaker of the House. He's the leader of our party at this point in terms of the House of Representatives. I don't get caught up in a lot of the drama. I just keep my head down and do my job and represent the people of the state of Wyoming and move forward with my committee work, such as on the Judiciary Committee. So I will be actively involved in this impeachment inquiry in my role in that regard. We're going to be funding the government. These are the kinds of things that happen, I think, almost every single year. It's just what goes on in Washington, D.C. There's punching and there's jabbing and there's just a lot of palace intrigue, but eventually we'll get to the point where we put together the budget that we need to do to fund the government.
Okay.
I agree with the conservatives. I am a conservative. We have got to cut spending in Washington, D.C. We are $32 trillion in debt and moving higher very rapidly. We should not be hardwiring in the profligate spending that has happened over the last couple of years, ostensibly related to COVID. We need to get better policies out there in relation to our energy development and production. We need to start paying attention to the things that matter to the American people. And some of the drama back here, you just don't want to get too wrapped up in it. You want to really focus on where we need to get, which is let's fund the government at a reasonable rate, and let's move forward with trying to expose the incredible corruption of many of the people that are in this town.
Agreed. Yes. We need to stop spending. We need to cut spending. We need to make sure we're financially and fiscally responsible. Something else that you've brought to the table is you and another senator have introduced a bill to fight energy poverty. Now, this is new. Tell us about that.
Well, you've probably heard me speak many times about the fact that I think that energy poverty is immoral. And what I mean by energy poverty is energy policy that results in poverty. Energy policy that results in energy poverty. And the way that I put it is that I really do believe that there is a special place in hell for people who adopt and implement policies that are intended to increase the cost of housing, food, and energy. Yet that's where we are right now. The policies that are coming out of the Biden administration in terms of our ability to access and develop our affordable and clean and energy resources, coal, oil and gas, uranium, things like that. We have people in positions of power right now who've never produced or created anything in their lives, and so they're in this tear-down mode of this incredible infrastructure that we have created over the last 80 years that has so dramatically changed the lives for the better of people not only in Wyoming, not only in the United States, but around the world. And so much of what we're seeing right now in terms of the inflationary pressures, which are over $700 a month, increased costs in the last 2 years because of these horrible policies coming out of the Biden administration. And I think that it is wrong. And they are related to this idea that we have to move away from affordable energy, that we have to move away and start developing only what I would refer to as intermittent or unreliable energy. Our society cannot rely on wind and solar to power our economy. We do that, and we're going to be a third world country in no time. And the increased costs that we're seeing, the Rocky Mountain Power's recent effort to increase electricity rates by 30% in Wyoming, every bit of that can be traced back to their decisions to rely on unreliable energy and to try to forego the development of our oil and gas and coal and uranium resources that we have in abundance right there in Wyoming. So the purpose of this bill is to force the government to actually disclose the cost of these failed policies on the American people. Stop hiding them in all of these various tricks that they do. The only reason that you can say that wind and solar are, quote, affordable at this point is because of the grants, subsidies, and the tax incentives that the government gives to companies to develop them. They are not affordable. They cannot compete with oil and gas and coal. They simply, unless they have massive federal subsidies and state subsidies, and I don't agree with that.
I'm sure you're aware, Rocky Mountain Power said they're going to have to increase costs. Can you, as a person in Congress, can you do anything? I mean, I don't want to see my father-in-law's bill go up 30-40% because he just happens to use Rocky Mountain Power because that's the only power company that exists for him right here in Park County. Is there anything you can do to kind of alleviate that or make them not raise power rates so high?
Well, I am going to be weighing in on that very issue because, again, this is part of that energy poverty that I'm trying to stop, at least on the federal level. I do think that people need to be reaching out to their political leaders. They need to reach out to the governor, and they need to say, you know what, enough is enough. You got to stop going down this absurd road that is creating these kinds of pressures on our citizens right here in Wyoming. The fact is that Rocky Mountain Power has bought into this Green New Deal concept, and it's coming out of Colorado, and it's coming out of California, and Wyoming ratepayers are the ones that are suffering the consequences. So I think every one of us need to be pushing back against it, and we do that in part by reaching out to our political leaders, our state representatives and senators. Also get a hold of the governor's office and say, what are you doing to stop this? Because we don't think that this is right. The reason that Rocky Mountain Power, as you say, is the only resource available for your father-in-law is because we give these companies a form of a monopoly, that they get to operate as a utility, but they are supposed to be providing affordable and accessible energy, reliable energy. And when they make the decision to go down this green route, as they have over the last 20 years, it has undermined their ability to do that. And now we're paying for it. And I think it's wrong. And it goes directly to my point about energy poverty. These companies should not be going forward with pursuing unreliable energy and making us pay for it because Colorado and California have gone off the rails.
Representative Harriet Hageman from the great state of Wyoming. Again, thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon, okay? Have a great weekend.
Thanks, Matt.